Well, hello, Vincent James, Dare to Care. And you haven't even been on the job a year yet, have you?
I haven't. How are you doing today, Rachel?
I'm doing fine. It's always good to see you. Let's talk a little bit about from Louisville.
Mhm.
So, hometown guy.
Hometown, born and raised, as we say in the Midwest and in Louisville. I was educated in Jefferson County Public Schools, attended African High School, graduated, went to the University of Louisville, attended Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, and went to work for GE. That was my first job coming out of college.
And worked for the city for a while as well, correct?
Yes, I worked for the city. Worked for the city for 6 years, serving as the chief of community building. And all during this time, for the past 26 years, I've been pastoring right here in the Parkland community, the Elam Baptist Church.
So you are doing like double duty. You have no time off.
No time, no time, but it's been fun.
What I thought was interesting about that is the fact that Dare to Care was started by faith leaders, and it started after a tragedy with a young boy who died, Bobby Ellis, in 1969. Faith leaders started this. I thought there was such synergy, though, with a pastor now leading it. Did you see that connection as well?
Absolutely, Rachel. When I read about the history of Dare to Care and learned about how two faith leaders came together and said this should never happen in our city again. And so, and me being a pastor and a faith leader in the community and very active, I just saw the synergy just as a point of action for me and the opportunity to be able to serve. So I'm incredibly humbled by the opportunity to serve in our community in this way.
And we talked about that tragedy with that young boy and people so shocked and stunned that it could happen in our community.
Right.
How close are we for something like that happening again? Are we in an emergency situation?
Rich, we're not exactly in an emergency situation, but it is a challenging situation when we think about 1 in 6 young persons in our community don't have access to fresh food, fresh and healthy food to lead active lives. And it begins to even grow when we think about our senior population. So we're literally, you know, just literally two actions taking place in our community that could create a situation that would repeat what we saw in '69.
We have to be hyper vigilant. I want to. I'm going to get to inflation and COVID and the pandemic in just a moment. I'm looking on your shirt, food bank. There's a difference between a food bank and a food pantry. You all are food bank. Explain that.
A food bank is really a huge depository for food that is distributed through food pantries. If you're thinking about how we act and how we play a role in the community, it's much like a Metro United Way in terms of funds and resources come to Metro United Way and it's dispersed to agencies across the community. Well, we have over 270 partner agencies that we work with to get food out to our neighbors in need in the community. And so the food bank is actually a concept that was derived in the early 60s from a banker, actually in Arizona, who thought of the idea from soup kitchens. And he said, wait a minute, there's got to be a way that we can rescue this food and provide it for our neighbors in need. And so he was a banker and thought about how the concept of deposits and returns. And so he looked at the idea, and that's why it's called a food bank.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Here, and then it's provided to the community.
So the food bank helps serve the food pantries.
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
and then that gets to the people. Let's talk about the need. I look at inflation and I see so many people really close to having to make the choice between do I pay rent or do I eat? And we're seeing that, correct?
We are seeing that. We're seeing families who are really struggling. During the pandemic, we saw, those numbers exacerbated by the pandemic of those families that were in need. And the community had risen to the occasion and provided for that need. But we're seeing just this a greater, even not a greater need, even now with inflation in gas prices and inflation in food prices. And literally people are making life decisions at the gas pump. Do I put gas in my car to get to work, or do I get medication? Do I get food? And for the first times, we're seeing families who had never even considered coming to a food bank. We're seeing them driving to our various partner agencies.
And do we have enough to go around to the people who need it?
We do. We have a very fortunate situation in our community, in such a compassionate community where we have great donors who are providing opportunities for us to be able to provide that food for our community. But there is a real cost to that, just as it is in, with families across the country that are experiencing this. We're paying 40% more for our produce than we did last 2 years ago because of the inflation. So it's impacting us as well. But we're continuing to provide those services for our community. And we're not going to stop. We're not stopping any programs. We're looking for even more ways in which we can engage.
But boy, like you said, that's scary though, with your costs going up. We all know that funding gets cut. So it's always a dicey situation. There's always need. So
Right.
what I'm curious about too, I had read that with children this summer, that some of the waivers didn't come through or they were cut. Am I hearing that right? With JCPS, that where they would distribute food that families could take home, now the kids have to come to the school to eat. Am I right on that I heard?
But JCPS, I'm not familiar. One of the things I know that it has happened, recently the emergency funding ended and families they're not receiving the benefits that they received during the pandemic. Emergency SNAP benefits have ended. And so what we're seeing in schools are really they're not long providing the free lunch to all the students, which they have been doing during the pandemic. That's the one change that we've seen in JCPS. So that free lunch opportunity that they've seen during the pandemic is not taking place now.
And what's so scary about that, and we know with children, is so many times school is where they get the healthy lunches. So what I
Yes.
would ask you, if there is a family out there that is hurting and they're like, we don't have enough food, I mean,
Mhm.
who do they turn to? Is it Dare to Care?
It is there to care. That's why we're here. That's why we're in existence, for families who are in need and to fill that gap. Sometimes they're running out of money before the end of the month and they can't purchase groceries. We want to be able to provide a dignified way in which people can get access to fresh and healthy food. And so they can actually visit our website and they can gain information to identify a local food pantry based on their zip code right in their area. Or they could actually text food, FOOD, to 304-304, and they will receive a response that identifies for them where they can actually identify a pantry in their area.
So nobody should be going hungry then.
Absolutely. That's one of the things we want to continue to talk about and really elevate that conversation, that no one needs to go hungry. There is access to food, and one of the things that I think about, we live in the wealthiest country in the world, and there is no reason why we have food insecurity in communities that are underserved. And so, one of the things that we've been focusing on, just as much as making sure that we're providing high quality food, but we also want to think about how do we end this cycle of need, addressing the root causes to hunger and why it exists in our communities. And so we're wanting to really challenge both of those fronts and being able to operate in excellence on both sides.
And what would be some of those things with the food insecurity, those root causes that you're hoping to get? I mean, obviously poverty is one of them. What else?
But poverty is a huge factor in terms of food insecurity. And when we think about that, it's education, it's employment. And so one of the things that we're working on, and we just received a grant, a $200,000 grant from Feeding America, to look at developing what we're calling a model food pantry to address those root causes, so that when families that are in need come to our food pantries, they just don't have to think about just getting the food, but we can offer access and resources to financial coaching, financial literacy, employment opportunities, and working with partners in the community who are already doing this work. But we can provide access to those resources right in our food pantries, and setting up our food pantries to look much like grocery stores, so that an individual can walk in and don't have to have the shame and the stigma attached to it, to coming to a pantry. But it's just like what you and I would shop at Kroger's. We want that look and feel, but also to provide them the services to not just feed the folks in the line, but we want to end the line. We want to give you a way out and support that with other partners that we're working with.
I love that. I love that. And I heard you say to Terry Miners, and I love this, that you go in every day hoping that you don't have a job, right?
Exactly.
And I loved when you all talked about that. You're hoping one day this job won't be necessary.
You're going to go away. That this
I,
job will not be necessary. As a matter of fact, I share with my team and even developing strategic plans for the future so that there's other things that Dare to Care will be engaged in, but working ourselves literally out of the food banking business.
Well, and the one thing that you brought up, food insecurity, the fact that that is such a problem, and the pockets of food deserts. I shouldn't just say pockets. We're talking widespread areas,
Yes.
not really food pockets. And I'm surprised. I guess hopefully that is getting better, or is it?
It's actually getting worse. When we think about, we can think about the 9 contiguous neighborhoods in West Louisville. If we just looked at that area, you have over 66,000 residents, but you only have 2 grocery stores that are supplying 66,000 residents. That's insane.
It
But
is. It's crazy.
that's some of the issues in terms of which we have to grapple with as a community to say that this cannot be. What do we need to do to make sure that all of our citizens have access to fresh food, which is basically a basic human right? And so we not only want to provide that food, but we also want to advocate for those who don't have a voice, to give them a voice in what we're doing and working together to make a change.
And so hopefully that's part of the strategy as well. What can we do to water that desert with food and make sure that this isn't a continual problem? Because we know what the problem is, right?
Exactly. We know what the problem is. And so we know that we need to address it. And it's a complex problem. And so being that, that's one of the things in my previous role at the city, I love challenges and I love complex problems. I was addressing homelessness and working with our homeless population in our community, as well as violence prevention, and setting up systems that really address violence prevention. And so I see this issue of food insecurity as the same kind of complex human problem that we have, but it is solvable. We can eradicate food insecurity in our lifetime, but it's going to take all of us working together to do it.
Which leads me right into, we've talked about if a family is facing trouble where they can get food. If there's somebody who would be watching this and going, okay, Vincent, what can I do? Is it donate food? Is it donate time? Is it donate money? What is the best way to help?
The best way to help, we have an incredible website at daretocare.org. They can go online, they can donate resources, they can donate food, or they can also volunteer. We have a 55,000 square foot warehouse on Fern Valley Road. We also have a 10,000 square foot warehouse in West Louisville, in the Big A shopping area. And one of the things that they can volunteer to be able to provide resources for our community at one of those locations. We also have a community kitchen that's located at 28th and Virginia. This community kitchen provides meals for our kids cafe. We have over 35 sites that we're providing 3 hot meals a day for kids this summer. And so they can volunteer in terms of the meal preparation and all those things as well.
And I was just curious, as a pastor, what gets you up each day going in, knowing that some of these problems are so big? I mean, you climb a mountain every day. What
Yes.
is it? What is it that motivates you every day to get up, get out of bed, and go in and try and solve this?
What gets me up every day is actually a event that occurred in my life as a pastor. I had a young lady who was attending our vacation Bible school, and we were providing meals, for the vacation Bible school students. And it was a lunch meal. And so I went out later that afternoon and saw this young lady walking back behind a tree, and I saw her reaching for something. And I said, "Hey, how you doing? What's going on?" And she was reaching for the food that we were providing at lunchtime. She
Mm.
said, please forgive me, but I wanted to make sure that my family had food for tonight.
Mm.
That's why I'm hiding this food here today. I said, listen, don't you ever worry about your family needing food again. This church that you're a part of will help with that. And I think about her every day when I wake up, because those are the kids and families that we're wanting to help. We're wanting to make sure that there's no family that's having to hide food or hoard food because they're afraid that they won't eat later on. We want to make sure that they have access to the food that they need and desire and want, that they can have better, higher quality life living.
That sweet, sweet young girl trying to help her family.
Yes, absolutely. I think about her every day, and that gets me up with excitement to know that I'm helping a family just like that today.
Well, congratulations on all your good work. And we can't thank you enough for trying to be a problem solver and moving the needle and helping people in need.
Absolutely, Rachel. I appreciate you having me here because one of the things that since I've been in this new role for 8 months now, that our community needs to know the pain points in which people are living in every day, and elevating the conversation of food insecurity and having access to food, and why Dare to Care is here to be able to provide those services. So thank you for the opportunity to be able to share that message.
Thank you so much.
All right.